So in 2022, the Infrastructure Investment and Job Act directed the FCC to provide greater transparency, some additional consumer protections, and for the most part, regulate all internet service delivery. It's all been pulled in under the 1996 Telecommunications Act, and the FCC has subsequently issued two orders that there's been a bunch of revisions, there's been a bunch of arguments back and forth, but at this point, the deadlines have already come for service providers with more than 100,000 subscribers. The new broadband data collection reporting is now in place, and all internet service providers are required to comply with it. The only exception to that is for organizations with less than 25 employees. They're covered under the Paperwork Relief Act of 2002, which means they don't have to comply with it unless there's some other program, BEAD funding, RDOF, some other mechanism that forces them to comply. But if they're not a recipient of any of that grant money, they don't actually have to participate in these programs. What the FCC is directing is basically a new, more unified and much more granular approach for reporting. And specifically, they're pulling in the subscription information, the fabric data, which is the information that they've contracted with CostQuest to produce. They're bringing that in with the customer the customer detail and the around the products and the product information itself. The thing is that the product definitions don't necessarily align with the way that the FCC describes internet service products. The FCC requires the plan ID to correspond to a unique service offering at a unique price point over a specific medium of delivery. So fiber versus copper versus licensed versus unlicensed wireless, residential price list versus commercial price list versus small business price list. And if there's any change in price, any kind of a promotional product, any kind of packaging that's going on, if you're including the router or installation fees, or the taxes are a pass through, or the taxes aren't a pass through, and you're individually disclosing them on the bill, any related charge has to be disclosed on those labels. The part that's interesting about that is if you're going to put all of that detail together in one place to be able to create the label, and then every time there's a price change and you have to track that price change, and every time there's a change in the technology or the product definition, more customers come onto your network, so your typical latency goes up, or you replace a bunch of back-end equipment, and now the typical upload and download speed actually improves by 15 or 25%. You have to disclose that on these labels. And every time you change any of the information that would be presented on a label, that generates a new plan ID. So if you've already got all of that data in one place to be able to generate the plans, and CostQuest is providing us with normalized service location detail for all service locations nationwide, which is the broadband service location IDs and the fabric data. You combine that with a few more pieces of information around your FRN and your your service provider details, you can now fully automate your broadband data collection and your transparency reporting. And that's essentially what we've done with our broadband's compliance, with the broadband compliance genie. What ETI has introduced here is a mechanism for recording all of the provider details, recording all of your product offering details, setting all the different pricing up, and then tracking those plan IDs so that they are discretely reportable. And one of those reports is obviously the labels that you have to have on your website and at any point of sale. But with two additional pieces of information, the service locations that those products are available at, and which products have been sold to which service locations. If you've got those two pieces of information taken in snapshots on July 1 and January 1 of any given year, you take that snapshot data out of your BSS, you upload it into the back end of our database, and we then can automatically generate for you a human readable PDF and a downloadable CSV file for any of the transparency or BDC reporting requirements. And these reporting requirements are then available for you to review. The way to think about it is like with the way that TurboTax works, or any of the online tax preparation services, where you go through everything, you upload it, you tweak the numbers until you're confident that this is what you want to actually submit to the federal government, in that case the IRS. In our case, you're doing the same thing. You're maintaining the data in this system, organizing it, validating it, and if the data looks good and is consistent with the story that you want to tell to the FCC, then you log on to the BDC reporting website twice a year, take these CSV files off of the compliance genie, upload them to the FCC, and now you've got a consistent story of what you disclosed in the public arena through your broadband labels on your websites and at any of your points of sale, and what you're disclosing to the FCC. And if anybody audits it, all of it will tie out. The numbers will all add up. Everything will track, because it was all based on the same information from the same source of data. And the beauty of this is that while the FCC has a certain way that they want you to think about products and they want you to report on your products, this functions as an abstraction layer. It allows you to organize this data independently of the way that you run your business. The way that you have traditionally sold your products doesn't have to change. The way that everything is organized in your BSS and your OSS and has been contracted and sold through to your customer, you really don't have to change it. You just have to map it in this system into our system, which produces compliant reporting. And then this abstraction layer is able to facilitate compliant reporting and present a consistent story to anybody that wants to ask the question, what products are you selling? Where are you selling them? How do you go about making that service delivery? And what kind of numbers are involved in all of that? It's a complete end-to-end solution, and it's built off of compliance with labels, gives you full automation of some of the most arduous reporting that we have in the industry. It's a pretty simple step. So that, in a nutshell, that's compliance, Jeannie. Any questions?